CULTIC describes itself as a horror-flavored retro shooter with a focus on tight gunplay, open-ended combat, and environmental interactivity, and this is one of those times where the finished product is as advertised. Developed by Jason Smith of Jazz Games and published by 3D Realms, CULTIC Chapter 1 puts you in the shoes of a detective investigating a series of mysterious disappearances and gruesome murders, only have to go rogue and solve the case all by himself. Things go poorly. Not to be outdone, you rise from your grave, grab a nearby hatchet, and proceed to carve your way through an army of murderous cultists, undead, and mutated horrors. So let's get this out of the way right now. CULTIC is not Blood. It's obviously inspired by Blood and has some elements that will be very familiar to fans of the seminal Monolith build engine shooter, but this is definitely its own game with its own feel to it. The first way that comes across is in the visual department. CULTIC has a deliberately limited color palette and lower-res textures that immediately gives everything a darker, grittier tone than its 90s forebearer, even before taking the mass graves and severed body parts into account. This is combined with a combination of 2D pixel and voxel rendering on enemies and objects that gives CULTIC a very unique look. The game's environments range from dilapidated buildings to mine shafts, creepy forests to flooded catacombs, each one providing plenty of combat both up close and afar. I never found the art style to negatively impact my ability to pick off targets at a distance, and when some evil bastard decided to get in my face, my god, those scenery splattering headshots are a thing of beauty, punctuated by occasional slow-mo. All made possible by an arsenal that I can describe simply as impactful. A lot of this goes to the sound design, which really goes a long way to making each hit feel powerful, from the humble hatchet, Mauser's C96 pistol, head-popping lever action, classic double barrel, bullet hose Sten, high-impact grenade launcher, FG-42 sniper rifle, and the game's BFG, the incinerator. Not to mention throwable dynamite bundles and Molotov cocktails that come with very useful alt-fire modes. Every weapon in your arsenal has its own niche and can still be useful throughout your playthrough, especially if you use collected weapon parts to upgrade their abilities at workbenches scattered throughout the game. And when all that fails, pick something up and chuck it at someone's head really hard. Of course, what's the point of having all these toys if there's no one to use them on, right? Your opposition initially consists of a variety of rogue cultists, but before long, more unnatural enemies will begin to join their ranks, along with elite fanatics armed with some serious firepower. Some will rush you, others will snipe you from afar, and you'll need to adjust your tactics to survive depending on what combination of freaks the game throws at you. And this can be pretty hectic depending on which difficulty you select. For instance, here's what's behind the very first door in the game on standard difficulty. And here it is on extreme. Yeah, your best defense against this kind of opposition aside from your arsenal is to keep moving. Luckily our protagonist is a pretty agile guy able to run, jump, dodge, roll, and slide around to keep himself out of the line of fire. And he's got a pretty mighty boot too. This isn't to say the game is a non-stop rush start to finish though. Movement is fast, but still very deliberate, especially compared to other modern retro shooters that emphasize speed. There are also plenty of moments where the game slows down to amp up the creepiness. The game's tone is definitely on the horror side while still being an action game first and foremost, something that's also reflected in CULTIC's soundtrack, which alternates badass combat themes with eerie soundscapes. Now, for all my praise so far, the game isn't perfect. While I didn't run into any bugs, the enemy AI isn't necessarily the smartest, which isn't out of character, but did result in some larger nasties getting stuck on the environment at times, allowing me to take them out quick. Other than that, I think the main issue that people might have, other than some complaints I've seen about the art style, which I don't agree with, is the length. As the title says, this is only the first chapter of CULTIC, with 10 levels that can be finished in a few hours depending on difficulty and how persistent you are in your secret hunting. Luckily, the price has been set accordingly, and there is a wave-based survival mode to give additional replay value. However, this does mean that what story there is, told through found notes and occasional remarks by the silent protagonist when interacting with stuff, ends on a cliffhanger that won't be resolved until the next episode is released sometime in the future. The thought that kept coming to me while unloading hot lead into waves of heavily armed psychotic zealots was that this game is like playing through 80s horror throwback The Void if it had been directed by John Woo. That's no faint praise, made all the more impressive by the fact that this is basically the work of one guy. There's a genuinely singular authorial vision at work here, and the fact that it also resulted in a really great shooter whose next episode I can't wait to play is all the more impressive. CULTIC's first chapter lived up to my expectations, and I highly recommend giving this one a shot.